Ma te koe te aroa, titiro ki taranaki, e pure kou, ko au kei raro e. Ko taranaki te maunga, ko waingongoro te awa, ko aute te waka no ngā rua ine, no ngā te ruanui, I wānau mai au I te awera, e tupuaki au I te awera. Nō reira, tēnā koe e te wanaunga, e te waine, e te rangatira no Taranaki. Nau mai ki te kaupapa o te pōnei, ngā mihi nui ki a koe mō tō whakaro I tēnei wā. On behalf of te wai, o Waine o Tamaki Makaurau, the Auckland Women's Centre. I really want to thank you, Debbie, for being our manuhiri here tonight. I also want to thank you for your ma'i and your service to your apu, your iwi, and to the tangata of Aotearoa. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Tēnā koe.
O tira tēnā tātou katoa, nau mai, whakapiri mai, hono mai koutou katoa. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us this evening, and we know why you did, because there's a spectacular wahine, and she is sitting in front of a spectacular painting, nā tame iti I mahi, e te rakatira. Tēnei ka mihi kia a koe, kua mihia koe e tō whanauka, engari he mea nui hoki kia mea atu au ki a koe e kau anu atu nei te honga e mātaki maina. Nō reira, ngā mihi nui ki a koe nau mai, whakapiri mai. Debbie and all of us have actually been on this call getting ready, but we were very distracted because we started gossiping, to be honest, and it tells me that this is going to be an awesome evening. When you talk about politicians, I don't know that anyone in the world has one like this, because she leads in so many ways. She leads just by her presence. And so thank you for joining us with your presence tonight. I'm just going to let the two Taranaki girls Taranaki out for a second, because as I say, we didn't actually get to do our usual kind of prepping kōrero because they're busy going, where do you live? Oh, where is that? So Nicola and Maramanakwe, do you know exactly where Debbie is now? Do you guys know where each other are, like in terms of, you know, being Taranaki girls?
I tell you what, can you hear or see me? My computer seems to have... Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you've all vanished. Aroha mai. So, okay, as long as you can hear me. I was born and raised in Hawera on my Turanga Waiwai in South Taranaki. So just having a kōrero with Debbie before we began, I know exactly where she is.
How would you describe it, Debbie? Kai hea koe tēnei wā, where are you now in your whānau homestead?
O tūtahi ngā mihi kia koutou kua tai mai. Ko Taranaki te maunga, ko Aotea te waka, ko Pātia te awa, ko Pariroa tuku kāinga, tuku marae, e Ngāti Runi, ngā ruihine, ngā rauru oku iwi hoki. Ka tupo au ki Pātia, nō reira ka mate au ki tērā wai tuku papakainga oki, tuku ukaipo oki, ko Debbie Ngarewa-Packer. And I'm in, I live in, actually it's Makoia, and in between Pātia and Hawera, and I didn't know until I just heard Nicola that she was a, so the code for phone numbers here is Pātia is 273, and Hawera is 278. So, and we all call ourselves 273 or 278 if you've been around here for 1,000 years. So I didn't know that Nicola was a 2007-8 wahine. So I'm extremely humbled by that. So yeah, so I know where, and my office, my community office is in Te Awara as well. And I also didn't know you were Ngā Ruihine. So I'm really, we're like almost, well, we're probably cousins.
Well, you know.
So yeah, so it's amazing the wahine that have come out of the spring of Taranaki. So it's really good to see you, Ihua.
Oh, kia ora. Tatou katoa, but it is a wonder, you know, that's the beauty of pepeha and of all our kōrero that tells the world who we are and where we come from. And I love that we've witnessed that you realize that you're closely connected. For people who don't speak the beautiful dialect that our sisters are speaking now, you may know it as Te Hawera, and it sounds in the way that they speak, it's slightly different, but Te Hawera is the center of the universe. Nō reira, mihi ana ki a koe, Nicola, who's in a different part of the world in your flash hotel room. Engari, tēnā koe I tō mihi mai. Thank you so much, as always. I'd just like to add, Debbie, that because I knew of this connection, I did say, are you sure you don't want Nicola to run this tonight? But she is a generous leader in every way, and she wanted to make sure that everybody could participate, but also we don't want to overload you, Nicola. But thank you for all of the mahi that you do. Thank you for holding the mauri of the position that you do, and thank you for being in Queenstown in that gorgeous hotel room. I hope you're okay.
Yeah, it's not too hideous.
Tēnā koe. E kare mā. So I'll just let you know that we have had to turn the cameras off just to make sure we don't get too much of a lag. But Debbie, I was actually enjoying seeing people come up. Did you see that?
Yeah, that was really exciting, especially for the kaupapa, because it's not often, especially, that we stop for ourselves as wahine. So I get invited to a lot of things, but when it comes to us as wahine to talk to us, that's always a priority. And so it was really exciting. So it's a busy time, it's a crazy time of life. So really appreciate everyone coming together.
Aye, and please do put your pātai in the chat, because we have some that have been pre-sent, but I have a feeling more might come up. So feel free to interact and to feel like you're talking directly to Debbie as well, because this is your opportunity. And I'm going to pick up on what you just said about how often we don't stop, because I look at all of the mahi that you do, that you've always done. So what does it look like for you to be in a state of being replenished and to have your wairua being fed rather than you always serving?
Yeah, I think like probably most can relate to, I was raised in a very matriarchal, very staunch wahine circle, and the aunties who would just serve until they dropped. In fact, we just buried one of those aunties in the weekend. And I think the thing that everyone would do is live collectively, so that there were the moko, there were the normal, I shouldn't say the normal life, but the being able to garden, being able to kai. Most will know that I'm a shocking surfer. You know, I can't understand why the professionals have evaded me. But anyway, so we've always lived by the sea and the taiao, and I guess that's why I'm such a staunch protector of it, because that's how we replenish ourselves, just being home, doing nothing, being out amongst the silence, being able to wear trackies and not brush your hair for a week. So this took real effort tonight. And I think that is it, just demasking. De-armoring, demasking, where you feel safe. And I was just saying earlier that I've been very fortunate that I live on tupuna land. It's the first time in probably 170 years that it's been back with us. So I find that really replenishing as well. I know it sounds real simple, but I think a lot of how we declutter, detox is simple, and that's why it's so important to sort of be able to breathe our air, be in our moana, be on our whenua, so you can see why we got so unwell when we were displaced. So yeah, so that's simple.
Reclamation, I mean, it's simple, but it's hard, right? To actually be able to live that existence. And I think that's what you're saying in terms of the privilege that unfortunately shouldn't be a privilege, to feel our whenua under us and to know the story of our whenua. When you are in a different environment in Parliament, and you are sensitive to the taiao because you're in tune, what are your mechanisms for being in that environment on you spiritually and mentally?
I think, and I thought about this. I saw a question come across of a very similar nature. I think the most important thing for us was to arrive at that place and not be like so many others that we've seen in there. So the first thing we highlighted, and I think I said it in my maiden speech, were the monsters on the walls. And we may not get to remove that, but actually by acknowledging that there is here, that there are things on here that make this environment really, really kino, and calling it out, I guess, made it then okay for people to understand why these certain places, we just won't go in that whare. And we change, I don't know if you realise this, but in Parliament there's almost a CEO of everything. So there's a CEO of art. So anything that was visual around us that didn't lift our Māori and our Wairua got removed. And we sort of had almost like a titoko waru moment, like we'd take it down and it would be back. And then, or a pariaka, when we actually took the battens out, then we'd take the surveyor's pegs out, and then we'd take it down, and then the next day it'd be back. Then the next time, I think we went through a phase of taking it down and moving it, and then put it in boxes. So we don't have offices like normal. We completely physically changed the space so that we have whānau room, and we have kaitahi. We have put in karakia before we go into the house. We do a lot of really, again, things that we recognise at home that we do to make it safe for us. And I think it's really important. It doesn't matter what culture, what it is that makes it makes you feel good. That's what you really need to do in that space, and really amplify that. So we did that, and I think some know we also insisted on dressing how we best think like us, because authenticity, I think many politicians go in there to be authentic. They really do, really, really do. But the environment and what it attracts, and it's almost like a hive of power and influence, and the advocates that hang around there aren't always there to waka whanaunga like you do when you come on to a marae. Like, you greet and you receive each other, and you these respect, they're not always like that. So we did some big physical things, some that got into the headlines internationally, but that was on purpose, because we want to make it okay for the next generation of Māori. And if indeed we're going to build a tiriti-centric Aotearoa, it needs to look like there's another partner in this, and it didn't. So we did a lot of physical things to hold our wairua, and continue to be honest. So yeah.
Well, that would be daily as you experience it. So in terms of people understanding, so that I make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about, one of the international examples was, of course, the necktie, and just the things that sometimes we are not challenging, because like you say, this is power as it's been defined to us. This is appropriateness, formality, all of those things in a whare that we've been told we must, that dictates how we act. So we being Māori, did you wānanga that before you came in? Is that how you made those sort of policies about how you work together?
We tend to wānanga, a lot, and then follow our puku. And I think it's really important, and hopefully that's a culture that we encourage, especially our rangatahi, those who are kōrero te kupu, diversity, that we actually re-indigenize our spaces, that we re-diversify these spaces, and it doesn't just become tick box. Actually, we physically change it. And so yeah, we did wānanga, but we also just followed our gut, because it just didn't, like, I don't know. I can see how so many of our whānau struggle, but what we wanted to do, and I don't know if many listening, 70% of Māori are under 40 years old. And we knew when we were rebuilding the movement that we needed to see more Māori wahine. We need to see more with moko kawai, with tā moko. We needed them to feel and relate to those making decisions, and they need to be part of this culture. They need to be able to look in there and not see a whole lot of beige, which is really, and I think when everyone can see and can relate to that place, then the decisions will be made that think about us all. And I think we both Rawiri and I had spent a lot of time on the other side of the counter. You know, you just know when you go in there sometimes, if you're not the right look, or if you're not hooked up with all the right contacts, if you're not profiled properly, you know, sometimes what you're needing to advocate for is not really appreciated. So yeah, sorry, it was probably a long answer, but yeah, wānanga and gut.
No, that's fantastic. And there's just so many questions that come out of that, because I was thinking about your gut. I'm pretty sure you didn't go in there and go, and then and what I'm gonna do is gonna pukana as I leave. So that was a gut moment.
Yeah, there's lots of gut moments, like when I'm sitting there and I'm listening to someone absolutely, you know, supporting misogynistic, discriminatory racism, and I'm like, that I try to, like, yeah, because people like just have this like mask look, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I try to not hide my facials. Then I just thought, no, actually, in our pipeline, in our parliament, out here on the ground in real life, those aunties tell you what they think. That's how the woman that I was raised with, that's how they project their approval or disapproval. They don't have to say a single thing. And so yeah, so no, there's lots of those. And I wondered whether it was appropriate. Like I think I first thought maybe you should just, you know, buckle in and but I just thought, no, that's organic. That's definitely organic. Yeah.
And it comes out of you, and I might watch it quite a few times on TikTok on repeat. But I like the one where Snoop Dogg became the soundtrack. That was
Oh
particularly good.
yeah.
Yeah. But
I think, yeah, that was the sunglass one, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. Sorry.
it was the gangster. No, don't be sorry. It was enjoyable. And I wonder, have you always been equipped to come into spaces like that? Okay. So
Yeah,
when
no, I don't. I think, I mean, one of the things that and you can take this two ways. One of my greatest strengths and privileges is that my whānau have always been ahika, which means that even though things got taken off us, even though during the confiscation of our land, 70 plus of our ancestors were taken down to Dunedin, the wahine have always been here in ahika. So I've probably, the other part of that is that these are a consequence and a response, an obligation to be ahika too. But I think you grow into it, and so I was always lucky to have strong women around. We have a reconciliation in Taranaki between what is passive and having come from some really feisty rangatira that really took the crown on, and so there's this reconciliation between what is it that we live and raise to. The truth is, but I think I was encouraged and I was very nurtured to be able to grow and find my mouth, and even when may have been way too radical, I'm lucky my mum, my aunties, the wahine around me have always nurtured that, probably to their detriment sometimes too. But yeah.
you do seem to have a sense of occasion though, and understanding of authenticity, but also of I guess emblems, things that speak. So you were talking about passive resistance and what you're known for, and yet you held the media. You as you came when you did your speech. Was that one of those puku moments, or yeah? Okay.
Yeah. A bit of both, to be honest. I and I think Nicola can probably relate to this. In Taranaki, we're well known for pariaka, for our passive resistance. Being passive, and I really encourage that as women, we understand that being passive, being peaceful does not mean being quiet and submissive. It also has strength. It has resilience, and the mere was, I come from a line of wahine who learned from a tohunga, Langimotu here, who's from the awa of Taiaha and mere, but also it's something like the whenua that we're reclaiming, like our reo, and also come from, as Nicola will in Ngā Ruhine, Titoko Waru, who took on the crown. So we inside us, we have a history that fought and fought, you know, to the death. And then we have a history that tried another approach and tried the passive resistance. Each is who we are. And so that's actually why my maiden speech I had the media, which was about pakanga, about fighting, but also it's about strength and resilience, and then I guess being able to show our tohu as pariaka and taranaki. But I always make sure that these explanations, being passive and being peaceful, is not about being submissive. And I really urge that wahine look into that more and find that within their own wahine. I'm a real advocate of our wahine atua, and knowing our own atua and our own strength. And I think that's another part of reclaiming our well-being as wahine as well. So yeah, there's lots of things that we do, and I think I'm very, very fortunate to have been exposed to lots of wahine, and actually Hurangi's my uncle, Te Miringa Hohaia, were beautiful leaders that I've had in my upbringing as well. So just knowing our own identity. Sorry, Stacey.
But I just, for one thing, I can feel everybody nodding and feeling that point. But also the two men that you mentioned, I see them as having great balance of not just being testosterone males, but they really had that beauty of knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the hardest thing for us, and and it's really great working with Rawiri, because we've lost 90% of our whenua, and bye darling, my son, 90% of our whenua and our reo. Where Rawiri is from, they have 90% of their whenua and their reo. And he often sits here and says to me, I just can't believe, you wahine, you're staunch, you're really strong. And I think, well, when you lose and the state of loss and the state of grief isn't something that keeps you put. You have to grow through it, and you have to lead through it. And there was a time here where there just weren't a lot of our tani around. Often Anzac Day, there's only a few whānau that get to celebrate. Well, I shouldn't celebrate, but to commemorate Anzac, because my koro, I'm the second generation born since the Mururopatu confiscation period. My koro was the only surviving male. So a lot of our whānau lost male, and so our women had to lead through that. And can you imagine like saying goodbye to 70 plus of your immediate hapu, and they never came back? And so you would have to have done a lot. And I think that's where we intrinsically dig in from. So yeah.
Tēnā, because if people don't know the difference of the, I guess, the situations you're talking about that iwi find themselves in and that define you and that inspire you, you and Rawiri have very different Māori experiences. And so when you are the Māori party that sometimes asks to be homogenous, and cover us all, I get, is that challenging sometimes?
Yeah, it is really challenging, because you know what? There's a narrative, there's an experience there, there's a strength there that will add towards an amazing nation. And I guess growing up, I didn't really appreciate our identity and how it has made us who we are. But it's a really important part to deal with some of the things we've got before us. We've got, for example, climate change. It's on us. It's we should be now talking about how we're preserving our environment, the poverty that our whānau are enduring, the homelessness, but the other side of it is there is a resilience within our nationhood, within our very DNA, that I wish that we wouldn't have to defend, and we could just openly bring out and share. Now, we're just one small part of that, and so it's annoying that we have to keep doing one-stop shop approach, homogenous, I saw it during the COVID response when actually when you left us to our own devices, we were able to show what we're made of. And I think that's what's needed now. That's what we need economically. That's what we need to be able to do to look after each other. And I think that's the difference, is that the one-stop shop approach leaves people out. It doesn't highlight them and doesn't bring their value to developing our own nationhood, to developing a future focus Aotearoa. So yeah, it is frustrating, but I think it's just a matter of time now. I really do.
Yeah, it sounds like you understand what has to be done. There's educating you still have to do. It's hoha, but you acknowledge that it has to be done. And I want to actually go to a question from, is it Sarah or Sarah? Sorry, Kari, if I'm saying your name wrong. But it's a good time to ask this. How do you come face to face with such inequality and be presented with such discrepancy every single day and not just get really, really angry, frustrated and defeated? I'm not even a politician and I really struggle sometimes. That's what Sarah said.
Yeah, because I have hope and because I see the amazing young ones coming through who need us to focus on the solutions. And yes, we have to disrupt, we have to shake things up. And sometimes those who really will never change have a different view of that. But and if I can just say in Te Ao Māori, in the Māori world, we have a view that from the darkness, from te pō, can come growth, and not to be scared of disruption or conflict. And even the whenua we on came out of an eruption. So I think it's probably about being really, really focused on our kids, and really, really focused on those that you can see. We can see it out there. When I remember when I went to the climate strike a couple of years ago, and it was just beautiful. There were all our kids from the kura who rocked up with all these, like, pretty, they were just from a different category of life. Young wahine from Sacred Heart. Together, they owned that mic. Together, they were fighting. And there's just moments like that you've got to hold on to. I think also, when you live the life that we have in Taranaki, your anger sort of gets out of you at a younger age. And that's why we sort of see some of our tāne struggling to figure out where to put that anger. So I think that's what you do, is you just got to focus on the next generation and focus on hope. And you can see it. It's just a matter of time, and try not to take things too personal, because, I'm not going to let someone else's racist, sick attitude or ahua stop us from creating the magic that I know is waiting to be brought up.
Tēnā koe. And Catherine, who's a fantastic supporter, tēnā rawa atu koe.
Oh gosh, she's beautiful.
Catherine.
And
yeah. Talk a little bit about the tangata whenua, tangata tiriti relationship and I know you speak to tangata moana as well.
Absolutely. I think this is where the hope is that together we've got so many strengths. And the reality is, and it's a whole nother conversation and one unto itself, but the reality is that when our ancestors signed Te Tiriti, they signed it on knowing that they needed to help those who had arrived to behave and to live in harmony and to work together. And they signed it actually believing in the spirit of, look, we're all here together, we're going to have to live and work together. They actually signed it as a koha. It wasn't signed and done as a hoha. It wasn't done to be part of a whole colonizing culture that I guess had come. And I think it's quite insulting at times when people sort of don't really, when they imply that, our ancestors would have just signed something and given it over. Why would they? They were the majority here, and they were thriving and had been trading and coming all over the world with their sails up the right way on their waka. But the reality, it's another story. But the reality is that, and we need those partnerships in our our mokopuna need those partnerships, our whenua needs those partnerships. And it is about the respect. Now, the reality is it's not tangata whenua who should be calling out the racism in those. It's actually our partners, tangata tiriti, who have equal relationships. They have the equal ability to bring their strengths out, the equal ability to come together and deal with the issues before us, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I don't know, but what it could be and what it should be is actually most of the relationships that I'm involved in are doing it. They are doing it. My mother's tangata tiriti, she's Irish. My father's tangata whenua. My mother spoke better reo up until her aneurysm and stroke than my father. My father has had absolutely no European marriage until my mama. So between them, they're a living example of how it could be. Actually, mum would be at the marae with the ringawera, but when it came to things, she was a tumuaki of our kura. When it came to fighting things, mum would be the one that would go and advocate for tangata whenua to the Crown and to officials because they would listen to her more. So I actually think it is about having our tangata tiriti. You're so important. You have rights. Your mana and your wairua and your relationship with us matters. It matters to us because it mattered to our tupuna. They never thought that we would not grow. They thought that the relationship would advance. And I think it is, and it does. Andrew Judd's another man that I live with around here in Taranaki. And, there are beautiful tangata tiriti who really lavish that role. But it was about partnering, and the inequities and inequalities that we see have happened because those who first signed forgot. And we need to help them remember to remember. I think that's where tangata tiriti and tangata moana are really important.
You seem to have to be doing a little bit of reminding in Parliament at the moment with current narratives about co-governance.
Oh God! Yeah. Oh, I know. I know this is really naive, but I just wish that people would politic on what's really needed right now. What's really needed now is that we address the poverty, that we address the issues that our tamariki and whānau are confronting, that we are able to put some of the things like, dare I say, but capital gains tax and be able to address those that have just had it their way for far too long. But instead we're debating, well, we're not, just those that are trying to probably appeal to a certain ilk of voters. But that's a really short argument, because that ilk will eventually become very, very, very quiet and aged and leave. And I don't mean that in a horrible way, but we are changing. The world has to change. And I just wish I'd spend more time on debating things that are going wrong versus things that are going right. There's amazing co-governance models out there, and you'll know within your iwi with Kaito, Stacey. But again, there's been a lot of, I've been really surprised by the, what do you call it? The baiting, race baiting, and the dog whistling and the derogatory politicking. And it's really low. And it's actually quite disgraceful to be behaving like that in front of a very young Aotearoa.
It was like someone pushed the buttons on the DeLorean and we went back to 1990.
Yeah. It's really sad. It's really low level politicking. But I guess, that's why a whole lot of other people don't go into politics, because they think that's the norm. It's just not. It's not, and we should never make it the norm. It's just a period in time which, when we look back at, will be hugely humiliating for those that are playing it.
So you were never put off when you contemplated joining Te Pāti Māori, well, being an MP, you were never put off by what you know to be true and those kind of low-level tactics?
No, to be honest, I'm a wahine from Pātia who owned her first business at 23, who got my MBA in Tasmania, went to and did things that, you know, that a lot of those kind of men around the board table and that just didn't see Māori women should be involved in. So I've been exposed to that sort of politicking for a very long time. And I was just surprised to see it from younger political leaders, because, you know, some of those political leaders have, they're not from the, you know, the Palestine male, sorry to say, but Palestine male culture that I was exposed to as a young woman coming through. So no, it's, you just, I think at times, you know, and I'd be shocked if there isn't any wahine on here that hasn't been exposed to some degree of that in some way. And you just have to hold your head up and look at it for what it is, and believe in what it is that you're contributing to. And I'm not the sort that would be a professional politician. By the way, I'm the sort that would be a bridging politician. I was a bridging CEO in iwi to bring the next generation through when we just had, you know, just a little bit too many of the same. And I'll do that in politics as well, is just bring them through and make them realise this is our space. Tangata whenua, tangata tiriti, tangata moana, this is our space. And don't ever let them think that it's not. Own our space.
I imagine because you've been like a director of Tui Ora Health, you've been CEO of Te Reo Irirangi o Taranaki, runanga leader, all sorts of types of leadership. What was the timing like for you to take this on, knowing, as you said, that you don't plan to be a career politician? I
think I'd been, to be honest, I actually was my second try. I actually tried in 2017, and I think you know, when we got to a lot of how do you say it, dead ends. You know, we were fighting to stop seabed mining. It's just an atrocious activity. We were fighting to have our rights recognised in councils of Māori wards. We were fighting to stop, I don't know if you remember, but Oranga Tamariki, our babies were being advertised on Trade Me. And we were here, and I whāngai all the time, because what's one more in this household? But yeah, we were here as whānau hapu iwi dying to have our babies, and we hadn't been connected. All the dead ends, and so we'd fill buses, and I'd do submissions, and I went into local government as deputy mayor to sort of fight for to stop the pollution in our awa, and every road kept leading to this place. And you know, the Beehive is the place where lobbying happened to bring our ancestors back from Dunedin. So the timing was matching the frustrations and the dead ends we were having with trying to progress kaupapa that were hurting us. And they were kaupapa that were threatening our kai, they were threatening our mental well-being, they were threatening our ability to be able to have certainty and live calmly and uninterrupted. So it sort of was a combination of the timing was matching the need, but also you get a sense that you've grown up to do this, and we need to have more of us in that place. And so that was sort of it. And it's really cool because we've got all these rangatai that are like all active on our social media, because I don't know how the heck they know who we are, but they're really engaged. And we were just down at the I've been at Tutangi in the last week, real grassroots whānau, and they're really involved, like they're really engaged. I've got an opinion on this and an opinion on that, and I just love it, because I think, yay, if all we're doing is invigorating an interest and giving relevance for our rangatahi to be and our pahaki to see that kaupapa that they've led for a long time is landing, then that's awesome, because it is a critical place. Local government, board of trustees, iwi runanga, parliament are making decisions, and have for a long time, about how we live. And so we need to be there. We don't need to be like them, but we do need to culture more people to be there.
And some of the mahi that you've done is particularly, I know, around digital equity, working with rangatahi to help them engage how they need to and show their incredible creativity. So I wanted to go to a couple of rangatahi pātai. Jerissa says, he pātai niche tāku on the school strike for climate, and rangatahi you talked about how they were involved. What might you advise about sustaining tiriti-led climate activism for an ever-evolving group? Because you noted how they actually included a lot of people and types of people. How can we empower and educate their tiriti literacy, even as grown adults who are struggling with this? Good pātai, ne?
Oh, it is a great pātai. And you know, that's so, I think the first thing is to remove the wakama. Wakama holds us back. Wakama actually can be a killer. To remove the shame of not knowing. It's okay, because it wasn't a natural part of anything that we learn about, not in our education system. It wasn't encouraged in our political system. It's very, really talked about outside of those who are the known carriers. So I think, and even promoting Te Tiriti was always done as the radicals all coming together in Waitangi. So first of all, I think it's really important that we all accept that we're all learning, hopefully to the day we die. And I think the critical part is actually ones like Catherine Delahunty and those that have, as tangata tiriti first, who have learned and are better at teaching their own than maybe even tangata whenua. So I think it's actually about reaching out and being able to reinvigorate and connect. And I'm more than happy to be a part of helping that. I think the other part is understanding what tiriti relationships looks like in real time, and just a real simple grassroots, real simple home to home, real simple in your mahi, what it looks like. And it is about like maybe taking stock of ourselves and saying, I've got it in all my policies, but actually how many Māori have I got here? I have discussed it with my rangatei, but have I really taken time to dig around what it is that they need to feel less wakama and more connected to what tiriti can do for us. So I'm not sure if I answered that, but I do think it's really simple. It is about how do we share our power? How have we used our own privilege in a way without any realization that doesn't address equality? And then when you're equal, when everyone's there together, then inequities can be discussed. But I do think it is about relationships and just less wakama and more honesty and more just check ourselves. Reach out to those who are the experts as well.
Because Jerissa said that's perfect, your response.
Oh, sure.
And speaking to what you said about Catherine, and sometimes tangata tiriti speaking to tangata tiriti, is that what you mean, that sometimes that education works better?
Absolutely. Because I think one of the things I love about Andrew Judd is he stands up and he goes, I'm a recovering racist, and I'm just like, and it's just like, it's because these are wakama to that. It's like they say, well, we know when you say, like, I'm a recovering chocolate addict. I mean, I spent a lot of my life obese and spent a lot of time trying to stay healthy for my mokopuna. And I guess, so we all have something that but when you boldly say out as a Pākehā sitting there saying to a whole room of other Pākehā, I'm a recovering racist, and I'll probably be that till the day I die. It's just like, oh, and the reality check that he can sort of say that I just did this, I didn't know my privilege, I didn't understand my white privilege, I didn't understand my white fragility. Now, when I say that, whoo, but when someone else says it to, it's just no different to us as women talking to women. So I think there needs to be more. And I mean, I just love, one of the things I love about Catherine is that when we've been attacked by racists, by those who are opposed to any type of anti-racism legislation or policy, Catherine and other staunch tangata tiriti like herself take them on, and that's how it should be. That because it's not of my creation that they don't know, but it really silences it. It's like one of your own calling your own out. It has a different impact than me saying defensive. It got to the point where, as Māori, you sort of like, even to, oh, don't use the R word. It's like, well, and I remember in the house a couple of times, I think I called Judith Collins out. I'm pretty sure I did. I'm not saying think I did. And I had to change the terminology. I wasn't allowed to call her a racist. And so my terminology, well, you're anti-Māori. And I think, again, it's I really love that tangata tiriti do that. And tangata tiriti and tangata moana are our best allies. And there's that kōrero about allies, like, what are you in your role to supporting your tangata whenua? Are you an ally?
And that's what a real ally looks like.
Homie is. Yeah. A homie, I love that.
Yeah, I know. And homie literally means ally in Māori.
Yeah.
And that's my homie. What up, my homie? Where my homie at? We need our homie. So, e mihi ana ki ngā homie katoa. You also talked about how we need to see ourselves. And so rangatahi need to see, and you mentioned wahine maumoko, looking like us. So can we talk a bit about when you became a wahine maumoko, when you received your or became kauaitehe and got your moko kauai?
Yeah. I wanted one from the time I was 18. So just a bit of context. For a little while, I think as a young woman, you become ashamed of what happened to us. And I was really lucky that was a brief moment. I've seen others in my whānau that it's not brief. And I mean, wahine, wahine mai, how the hell do you hold your head up, and where do you go when you learn that your ancestors were raped? They were left hapu when they were being removed from Pariaka. 3-year-olds got gonorrhea. Where do you put that as a young woman coming through teenagehood and dealing with her own womanhood? So I was really, really fortunate that I had Whaia Whittle Bailey as a kaiok, as a teacher when I was a boarder at Girls High in New Plymouth, and she was a real feminist. She was really ahead of her time, and she made me own that. Like, this wasn't our wakama. Our wahine survived that, and they stood up, and they continued to bring wakapapa into us, and we grew, irrespective of, in spite of. And so I knew at a very young age that I wanted to have a moko kauai. My problem was that my aunties, none of our aunties had it, and my very precious tangata tiriti mama didn't want her daughter marked not because she didn't think it was beautiful, because she didn't want me branded. And I think, so I had some years where I was, I went off and did me, and then I think they thought, okay, she's over this, she's going to do this. And when I think in my mid-30s, I said it again, and I think they knew this is it. There's no slowing her down. So mine was actually, and when I went at my cousin who was the chair of the iwi, young man, and another cousin, we went and got our moko kauai and did our moko papa at our marae. It was the first time in probably 100 and, pre-colonisation that we brought moko kauai and brought moko papa, which means that where we went to go and get our moko, and my cousin had a tāmoko on his face. And I think what we... so I had to go through a little bit of a thing to convince my whānau, because it was, it was a big deal. Some of our beautiful aunties in North Taranaki had got them done, but South Taranaki is extremely conservative. So we did wānanga and just decided that we were going to get it done, and did moko papa. And I'll tell you, the wharenui, which can fit hundreds, was just full. It was just full of tautoko, but most importantly, it was full of inquisitive. The people were just like, what is this going to look like? How will this go? What a statement. And then nearly every 3 to 4 months since, we have continued to have moko papa. My nieces have moko kauai. 3 or 4 of my cousins have had their full face done. We've had aunties queer who really wanted to and weren't encouraged, again, because they, you know, of what it might, the branding and the profiling. And so it was and I guess, and you'll see it, for me, it is about reclaiming and feeling whole. You know, I really felt whole. But also, you'll see it in a lot of my fashion and things too, that I will use fashion in my look as a form of activism, which is what our queer did. Our queer did that a lot, and it was, again, you know, they didn't have to speak and put a banner on. It was something they'd wear. The portai that I wore was recognition of status, and status that we grabbed. So there's a whole lot of things that I was taught that we do. But yeah, it was a real sense of feeling full. It was a real sense of bringing all the things that happen to us as a people to peace, and showing it's okay. We're coming back. We're coming back with love and aroha, you know.
Thank you for sharing that. And I wonder about that first time that you saw yourself with your moko kauai, because I know when my queer didn't get hers until she was 64. But with her, it wasn't like you sort of looked again. It was like it was just always there.
Yeah.
So how was it for you?
Oh, absolutely. You know, like, and you're probably one of the very first people I've ever answered this to, because I tend to, and I think I've probably been a little bit wakaiti about it because my aunties and that, you know, but now so many have. It's like, but I felt like it's when you see your firstborn, and you just knew they were coming to you. Just knew that you knew your firstborn before you saw your firstborn, and you knew what, you know, what you were in this world for. That's how I felt. It was just truly, I've never had any experience other than my children. But I particularly align it with my firstborn. You just get why you're here.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And yeah. Whoa, okay. Hit me right there, why don't you?
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that with all of us, because we understand the tapu of this kōrero, and that you choose to share that with us. So thank you. And I don't think many of us will forget that, because that really makes sense. That's the way to make it hit us in the puku. And nice to hear from Teresa too, that she's never felt more comfortable and more herself with how she looks until she revealed her kauai.
Aye.
A revelation. I did want to go back to another question, because, you know, I'm really mindful we've got some that I've wrapped into our kōrero that already came earlier, but I'd like you to have the opportunity to ask your questions, because it sounds like she's answering questions out of the ballot tonight. So let's just... This one says from Katrina, I'm currently doing my postgrad, and it's focused around turi Māori, so Māori deaf, and the statistics of troubled rangatahi that have hearing issues that are really high. Sorry, Melody, if I ever speak too quickly. And so also, how many deaf or hard of hearing Māori don't have access to Māori culture? And as you said, we need to focus on our tamariki, but it's breaking my heart that there's not enough support for our rangatahi turi Māori, our young Māori deaf. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, I think that there's not enough support, and it's so sad, because we have gotten all rangatahi excited about some of the things that have been going on politically, and then while we've been in virtual parliament, there hasn't been any translator, any tautoko, any interpreter at all. So it's been really, really tough, and I just think, you know, we just need to push on. Again, this is about equality and equity. We just need to push on, that we don't make things that have got simple solutions so hard. And I tautoko exactly what you're saying, that there needs to be more, but there needs to be more focus on our rangatahi, on a lot of kaupapa, as you raise. And I think people talk about it a lot in the policy space that I see down in Wellington, but I don't see, I guess, that sort of follow through action and commitment. And I think it's absolutely, it's a travesty, because we shouldn't be having, again, it creates wakama and it creates disconnect, and it's not fair. So tautoko o kōrero, and I think we all need to be doing more. I think that's in the disability space as well. I think it's in the whole. Now, we talked about this recently, even when I won't get you going there, but in the Health Select Committee in the space there, it's just, I just don't understand why, when you have options and you have resourcing and you have, tautoko, why we just don't address the things that make other people's lives come up to an equal par. They can participate and feel good.
Yeah. And in terms of anyone not able to participate in being Māori and in their Māoritanga, what have you witnessed that to do to people?
Oh, crikes. I think that comes down to this whole self-identity, and it comes down to, when we look at our education stats, and it comes off actually the pātai that's just come through. When we look at our education stats, we know that the best statistics are coming from those, and if we talk about the success or achievement rate, it comes from our tamariki rangatahi that come through kura kaupapa. But we have a large proportion of our whānau and tamariki rangatahi in general stream schools. So again, we also know that we come through, we die earlier. We die, and if you're from Tairawhiti, we die 7.5 years earlier on average. If you're from Tairawhiti, you die 12 years earlier in some situations. So it just seems absolutely tragic that we are so far down the line now as a nation. We know that in justice, in education, in health, in housing, that we actually need to be doing things by Māori for Māori, and it's just proven. It's proven that it works. So it's bloody heartbreaking and freaking frustrating as hell that we just don't give it over and say, Christ, let's do it. We've seen some really good models. We've seen it in whānau ora, and that hasn't been an easy run. But the reality is that if we were to do this again, it's in broadcasting, it's in matatini. If you look at the way that we talk about kapahaka and what it does, our taha Māori, our self-identity, our culture is the rongoa, which is the medicine. It's the medicine for a lot of things that go wrong. I've seen and been part of our tāne who come out of prison and who are collected up within their taha Māori, who learn their reo, find their place, and you're then whole again. So what it does is that the displacement makes us part, and then we continue to be part, and the trauma becomes intergenerational, and we're forever up against it. So, yeah, and I don't mean to put down a lot of work that a lot of people are doing in the advocacy space, but I think it's time. We've tried it so many other people's ways, and it's just really time that we get left to look after ourselves. Not without everyone else, but very targeted by Māori for Māori.
And so if we look at the Māori Health Authority, what are the key points that you consider non-negotiable in order for that to achieve what you just described?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I'd like to see improved on the Māori Health Authority, but the reality is, that's getting to the perfect picture. But the reality is, we need to see that the resourcing is committed and that we have an equal say. I know, and I'm going to be political in saying this, I know that there were a lot of things, and thank goodness that this Prime Minister was looking after us during COVID, because I fear if we'd had the other party, a lot of our people wouldn't have made it through. But the reality is there were some real major shortcomings. The fact that we had a vaccine rollout that was done on ages and profiling that didn't match Māori. 70% of Māori under 40, we were the last to be vaccinated in the way that they were rolling it out. The resourcing, the fact that we need to be able to have, the iwi checkpoints, a whole lot of stuff that we saw were perfect examples of why there needs to be a different approach. For Māori, and I actually don't even think that's just Māori, I actually think a lot in Aotearoa need to also have the focus on our wairua, have the focus on our hinengaro, have the focus on our tinana. So it's not just about clinical focus. So I'd like to see a Māori Health Authority applied across a lot of our kaupapa. And the party would like to see that too, because we just know that it's the system, it's not individuals. There's really good people inside the system, but actually with the system as a whole is get up not to do things our cultural way, that we need to be able to improve our mortality rate, improve our well-being. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that we have something that matches equally the general stream, but in a Māori way, complete equality. But it comes down to resourcing and making sure that those who've been appointed can do what they need to do.
And that the brilliance of the rongoā that you speak of can actually be enacted and can also at a spiritual, holistic level.
I just keep saying, imagine, this is what I sort of say to people when they're sort of like really stuck on, we don't want to change, just close your eyes and imagine if this was one way that we could stop Māori dying earlier, stop Māori from not going to specialists, stop Māori from not getting scanned for cancer, stop Māori from... Imagine if we suddenly become well. Because when we're well, we can learn. And when we learn, we can earn. Imagine if we just suddenly get on top of all the things that are taking us out. Imagine what we'd then talk about. Imagine what we would spend our time doing. Imagine how we'd be able to contribute. Imagine what this nation's opportunities are missing out because its tangata whenua are so unwell.
Is that part of the reality you're living now, that you're well? Because you talked briefly before about your choice to be well for your kids and to, I mean, I didn't know you were ever obese, but is that part of this reality you live now because you've been through that journey?
Yeah, I think it is. And continue to, because, kei te ako au, a toku reo. And, and I think the thing is that we have to be able to, by identifying the problem, and the problem isn't us. The problem isn't us because we're genetically unwell or not, we haven't got the right DNA. The problem is that we're not all faring well in the system because it wasn't made with us in mind. So, for example, if I talk about obesity, for a very, very long time as a woman, I had such low self-esteem because I measured my BMI with a model that was designed for my mother's ilk, very, very thoroughbred, very, very tiny. And I thought that I was a problem. I've got a Pacifica body. I'm a Pacifica wahine. I'm based in a nation that's in the Pacific. I'm not based in Europe. And I think for a long time, I thought, and with that lack of connect comes low self-esteem, comes living your life shorter than what you could be if you thought better about it. So I think those are some of the things that we have to continuously change. Is no, you're perfect. It's just that you're in a health system that wasn't designed for you with your body in mind. It wasn't designed for the Pacifica. It was designed for tiny little French and English women, which you are not. So, and I think those are some of the things that, when we sit there and say, yeah, I know you don't feel great because I'm a real student of maramataka. Guess why you don't feel great? This is all going on. Your ancestors didn't feel great at this time of the year because of the lunar activity with this. So there's just a whole lot of things that relate to our environment that, wasn't factored into the health system. And I truly believe that, and I see us when we share our tangi, I see a lot of Pākehā, a lot of non-Māori like to grieve like Māori grieve. So it's just about bringing us back into the systems and just saying, I get it, I get you tried it this way, but it wasn't invented for us. It wasn't invented with us in mind. And we're not going anywhere. This is the only place for tangata whenua. So you have to change the system because we're not changing.
Right. And so where people say it's a personal responsibility of what you're eating or how your body is looking, they're missing a bigger picture and the system that you didn't ask to be part of, but you are, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I guess you and I know that and we had it all the time. Like I had my aunts, I've got like boxes of noa for if I catch COVID. And honestly, it's just, we all knew we had to do other things, but that wasn't instead of, it was as well as. And I think that's the if there was a different narrative, even for whānau, look, it's safe, you need to get vaccinated, this is such and such, but also take the oromo and also take this and also, then I think the discussion would have been better. But we had a public health system that gave one message, and it wasn't the message that worked for our whānau. So I just think it's important to bring our own culture and who we are into the systems, into bureaucracy.
Aye. And we're getting more and more questions. So, Ehoma, I will focus on your questions because Pascal has mentioned something that's relevant to what you just said. How do you embrace your mixed whakapapa or all of your whakapapa?
Yeah, I think I just naturally do because, again, like I say, I was brought up with the best example of tangata tiriti and tangata whenua. And it was just gorgeous because neither was going to succumb. So even to this day, she may be an Irish woman living in Aotearoa, but believe me, I think I was, I am more in my taha Māori because this is where I was raised. That's what I know more. But I tell you, the Irish side and my other whānau make sure, and if they, you can sometimes you'll see them on my social media, and I think, oh, we also taught you that, and I think, oh God, so I think that ownership from my whānau to me keeps me real and keeps me embraced, and I think at times too, they also remind me not to contribute all my strengths to my taha Māori. I was raised, my koro was born in 1901, and like my whānau, we were raised in a 3-4 generational home, and he was hugely influential and hugely possessive. And so I think, at times when my grandmother would try to come in, I was also the oldest grandchild. He would make sure that, just remember this, Debbie, and you just remember that. And so it was, but I guess it's just how they owned us. We just naturally embrace it. Yeah.
And they're
very,
proud
very
of you.
blessed.
But also, if anyone's going to claim there's a trait that you've had or that I've noticed about you, your presence of mind to be listening to an interviewer, but simultaneously analyzing it. I saw this on the News Hub show, Breakfast, AM show. Yes. And so what happens in media is that sometimes you have a director in your ear saying, just do this knacky little thing, and just ask you to say this, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. But you were kind for a few moments, and then you said, wait, why are you making my tick box exercise? And I, as a TV, I could understand what was happening for the presenter. She was going, this is what my director's saying. Where does that clarity of analysis come from? Is there any ancestor you should acknowledge, or tell me about that as a strategy, because I think it's really powerful and a skill.
Yeah. I think my mama, to be honest. I think mum had this amazing, I think it was like a 10-hour bus trip with Eva Rickard, never came back the same. But I think she got decold on that bus trip. But I think mum has an absolute empathy. And I often explain to people, they sort of said, oh, why don't you do this? Why are you always in Team David and never Team Goliath? And I think mum's teaching of empathy and always staying focused on who you're serving and who you're there for. That interview was, I think what got me about that interview is that, one, we're way too down the line of the development of Aotearoa to be having tick box discussions, and I thought it was really poor for her intelligence, but it was insulting to mine as well, because I keep thinking, because I'm only, there's only two of us, but I'm really mindful of the influence that we have and the responsibility and obligation that comes with that. And if you don't have clarity of that, when someone does something like that, it can really, it can be a real detractor to the kaupapa that we represent. It was just narrow-minded. So I think Mum, well, I'm pretty sure Mum is the analytical, but it comes from a place of empathy, because she just truly believes that you have to think about those who would love to be in your position to ask these questions, and who you're representing when you answer them.
Tēnā koe. And possibly Mum, I don't know if she had a matekitenga and she saw that there would be TikTok or something that would take it to the world.
I know. I keep thinking, like, we did one recently, and we honestly, we don't act it, but we honestly must be we only have like a little team. We only got 5 because we're like on a small little budget, and we must be a nightmare for them, because they try to get us to do things with Rawiri and I, and we did this Instagram one time, and I don't know if everyone's seen it, but it was just, and of course I thought it was really cool, and we were practicing it. They gave us a practicing site, and I accidentally put it live. Oh my God, it was just, and then it was in the news, and then it was all over the place. I'm thinking, but you know what was really gorgeous is that it was on the news because we were being real. And I'm thinking, from the time we campaigned, when everyone told us we wouldn't get in, and that honestly, and some of those who are now wanting to be our mates, it was really gorgeous, because I kept thinking, we're just going to be ourselves, and we broke every template or prototype that's meant to go on in these places. I'm encouraged by that, because I think if we can do it, Rawi and I, who is fresh as, then those coming through are going to just blitz it, because it's just, I think we're rewriting it. I don't think people want the fake pretending to like babies and suiting up and no one can relate to you. I actually think they probably want to see us in our reality, fresh but not too fresh.
And accidentally turning on the live. Relatable things, but Māori in everything that you do. So it's just your way of being. You're indigenizing the space and challenging it in different ways, in every kind of iarangi. So we're occurring.
Stacey, I do want to say, if you don't mind, I do want to say one of the biggest ingredients to actually surviving down there, which I should have said in the beginning, is we laugh. We laugh at ourselves. We laugh with people. And I think that's something that's come from a lot of Māori whānau. Even when we cry, like we just had some tragedy down there, a young man shot on the road, and a queer, real ringawera whānau. And at Purapuruaki night, we actually spend laughing. We'll do anything to wakapiki, which means to lift up whānau, to make each other laugh, and even when you just want to bawl. And I think that helps us as well. That helps get clarity, and because we sort of sit there and think, look, whānau, we're going to come out of this alive, and we're going to go back and resume our other roles, and it's just not all of who we are. It's just a part of the journey of who and what we are doing,
So
we laugh way too much.
That rongoa, but don't stop. But understanding, like you say, sometimes people and our grief and tangi are always inspirational for one-liners and their classic moments, because all those emotions help us get through. Ne? And I want to go to Sue Bradford's question, if that's okay, because you're talking about Te Pāti Māori, and she said, kia ora for your beautiful kōrero, Debbie. Can you tell us, does Te Pāti Māori support the lowering of the voting age to 16 or 15 in Aotearoa?
Yeah, we've had some really good questions about that. And the reality is, and it is our rangatahi that are driving it. So there has been our 16 and 17-year-olds are making other big decisions in life. The more that participate in this, and more that are representative of the fact that, like I said, 70% of our population are under 40, 22 or 20, don't quote me, might be 25% are under 21. Yeah. And I think it shifts it. It shifts the kōrero, it shifts the responsibility as well, because our rangatahi are now facing not once, not two, not 3 bouts of a pandemic, which is bound to come back in another way and form, and climate change. And now we're seeing stuff going on in Europe that we haven't seen, So I think that we need to be able to encourage younger participation. Might shake it up a bit more too for some of those who think they should be running the country on their own. So
Kia ora.
yeah, kia ora, Sue.
Kapai. And Agnes says, I want to know Debbie's view about immigrants. Are we contributing to New Zealand's aspiration, or are we just in addition to the problem of the tangata whenua and challenging the colonist?
Oh no, I mean, I think first and foremost, if tangata whenua, and we've proved that, were in charge of who comes into our nation, we always had an open whakaaro to immigration and the importance of our manuiri. And they would be treated and blessed as manuiri. And I think, again, no one adds to the problem other than those who are anti-Māori. I've never come across, actually I did one, no, I'm South African, but I've never come across generally, most of our tautoko come from our whānau who have been more recent manuhiri than some of those who were first partners of the tiriti. So no, I don't think that at all. And in fact, I'm extremely supportive of our whānau that come across. I think the thing though, the challenge is that Aotearoa needs to and remind itself of the privilege of being kai manaaki and of the privilege to manaaki to look after those that come here. I wish that we had the ability to do that as the tiriti intended.
Well, talking about tiriti intentions and aspirations and living the reality, Zoe Hawke, tēnā rawa atu koe, has said and opened up about what her job is too. Māori Health Authority is one change that needed to happen, but across sectors, Oranga Tamariki, MSD, change needs to occur across as well. And she is the CEO of an organisation that receives funding across or the Oranga Tamariki Health and MSD, and each sector is so different and some are in the dark ages. She says, the system in one area impacts our whānau in another. We don't operate in isolation and our system shouldn't either. They need to be joined up and both working in partnership to create change. So is whānau ora part of that join up that Zoe's talked about?
Yeah, it is. And I think, I mean, if you look at some of the workings actually that our ancestor Maui Pomare did and Tā Mason Jury has done, it talks about the devolving, and this is how we break down the systems. I mean, some of the frustrations I see is that I see some really good MPs, okay, not to my left, but across in Labour and stuff. There's some really good Māori MPs really committed to change. But then when you go into a room or kōrero, the CEOs and they don't match or reflect anything that's needed. Then you go into the officials that are all the policy designers. They don't match it and have nil experience. And so I think what we need to do is see a devolving of and a letting go of some of those systems that actually are the barriers. And so I totally tautoko. And I think if you looked at the vision of what was proposed, and this is why it's so frustrating to sort of see, every time there's an equality or a Māori Health Authority debate, any legislation that proposes to change it, we come into a race. Hobson's pledge just go crazy, and I think that's a frustration because you're in the system, you know it doesn't work. I've been in the system, I know it doesn't work, and yet people are fighting that we want to change. They just want to hold status quo for the sake of holding status quo. They don't care that it's not working because they're not affected by it. They're not typical of the whānau who are dependent on it. And I think that's why it's really important that I mean, it's like I saw something recently. Oh, that's right. It was the Wahines rugby, got a male coach. Why are we consistently in situations where we have those who aren't part of it, who aren't affected, making decisions? And I think this is why it's critical that we continue to challenge and break them down. It's going to take a while, but we would have spent resourcing we would have developed capacity a hell of a lot better. And you look at the success rate of whānau ora with what little it's had, it's been phenomenal. And so I think we just continue to listen. You need to be bold and push to use those prototypes that don't match the officials and the bureaucrats.
But actually that flows nicely into this question from the Child Poverty Action Group, saying the Working for Families package manages to exclude the poorest families on benefits from at least $72.50 a week. Wahine Māori and their children are disproportionately affected as a result. Is it possible for Māori to have a louder voice on this issue, and how do we amplify this voice?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I really mihi to you, because really appreciate that the advocacy you do for us, that we're then able to go in there and challenge. The reality is that this Working for Families payments, the increasing benefits, hasn't matched at all what the recommendations were, and they're in catch up. They're consistently in catch up. So now we're in 7. I think they were like to match a 3.1 or 2% inflation rate. Now we're nearly, well, actually we're maybe over 7. So we've got to stop being in catch up. Again, it comes back to my simplistic comment, is that we have engaged experts, or the Crown has, who have made recommendations. We see it in the welfare space. We see it in the Tiriti and the Waitangi Tribunal space. I can't figure out why they don't just make it happen, because it would instantly ease pain, instantly address some of the poverty. Not all of it, but I know, and I think I really mihi to ones like yourselves that are out there doing the hard yards and have made time to keep ones like us abreast, and then we'll use our space in every way or form to make sure that our whānau's faces are seen and their voices are heard, because that's really all we should be. I think we did a thing about taking GST off Kai recently, and that wasn't our brains. That was actually Rahui Kātini. We did a thing about Mātaki Mai transformation, constitutional transformation. That wasn't our brains. So I think that's what politicians should be. They shouldn't try to be the be-all and end-all. They should be your bridge.
And that requires humility, whakaiti.
And not trying to, again, like I say, not trying to be the be-all and end-all. And I think that is because we have to be intentional. We have to be focused on the solutions and be intentional, and I'm more than happy to always be used to do that. More than happy to always learn, and more than happy to, because that's actually what we should be doing in that space.
You always learn, you activate, you have such clarity. I'm already seeing in the comments, people are saying, like Zoe, don't stop challenging koutou. Everyone's feeling fired up. And we do have a moment. Please, could we ask you to spend an extra couple of minutes to respond to our survey monkey that's in there, so that everyone can just give your feedback as well, because we appreciate, Debbie, there's so many people in your whare right now that you could be giving your energy to, but you've chosen to be with us tonight, and you've chosen to open up your heart to share with us the stories of your whānau, of your people, of yourself, of your tamariki, of your moko kauai. I know personally, I'm not going to forget some of the things you said tonight, and I will hold them. Ka titia ki te ngākau. They will help me as I move forward, and I hope you know and you can feel us all with you in the mahi that you're doing. Nā te mea ko au, ko koe, tonu te tuakana e arahi ana I a tātou katoa. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand you over to your other sister, to Nicola. Hei whakakapi I tā tātou hui. Engari e kore e mimiti ngā mihi ki a koe. Thank you so much for your time. Kia kaha, kia maia.
Oof, oh, where? Ngam inui anō, Debbie. Wow, yeah. Thank you so much for taking your time to be with us tonight. So we've had very similar experiences of growing up back there, and having so many moments of same. And then, whoa, being on that whenua, Te Tokowaru and Te Whiti and stuff, there's still moments in my adult life where I go through grieving because of what I see in my own whānau, and fighting